We are rolling. Hello, everyone. We are back again. I was here this morning with Texas Slim and the Beef Initiative, and now I am here with the Meat Mafia, which I absolutely love this name. It's very fun. And two incredible young men that have interviewed me, and I've since fallen in love with them. Um, I think anyone that wants to know how a woman wants to be treated on a first date should watch our video because really the way you guys were so interested in what I was doing and where I had been and where I'd come from, I'm like, gosh, this is really we should teach people this. This is how you converse with a female. Like it was amazing to be interviewed by you guys. But
Well,
let's start from the
we
very
appreciate that, and
beginning.
we'll send that message along to our mothers too.
Yes, yes. They'll be proud of you guys because it's just incredible to see somebody y'all's age doing this. Um, for me, I know there's a lot of people on Instagram that are influencers in the health, thing. And so, what made you guys think that you could make your mark in something that a lot of people would have just gone, "Oh, it's saturated. I'm not going there."
I think it didn't really necessarily start with a grand vision. I think we started with sort of this breadcrumb collecting approach. So I started writing for Texas Slim, who we were talking about before the show. And we were really just writing about food and things that we were interested in as it related to the food system. I had recently quit a job that I was interested in getting into the regenerative agriculture movement. And the only way I felt like I could do that was by just writing and talking about what I was learning. So Slim kind of gave me the platform to do that. And as it evolved, so Brett and I, we had this, we at the beginning of COVID had signed up for an Ironman together. And originally it was supposed to be in Mont-Tremblant, Canada. And we were going to go up, have a great weekend, do it right. But with Canada's restrictions on COVID, we had to pivot and sign up for an Ironman down in Waco. So we decided to do a whole month-long Airbnb, really do the experience right, train for a few weeks together leading up to it, and then run the race. So we, as that story alludes to, we're very focused on our health and care about it and think that it's something that is worth investing in. So with those two experiences kind of coming together, me writing for Slim about regenerative agriculture and us going through this Ironman experience together, there was a spark there that, behind the scenes, we were talking all the time, just living together, talking together, cooking our meals together, and getting excited about the idea of working alongside of each other after this Ironman experience and just talking about the interest that we have in the world of health and how it relates to all the things that are happening in the food system from the ground up, which is quite literally like the health of the soil is the health of the plants that are grown on it and the animals that are grown on it, and then how that plays into, our underlying health. And both of us have our own stories, which, I'll hand it over to Brett here to tell his story with his health. But I think we both had our own health experiences where at times these health problems gave us a lot of trouble. And so that was kind of the fuel to the fire. Like as we were writing, we started to kind of create our voice and come into our really ourselves and how we thought about how we think about food and how that relates to all aspects of our lives. So at the beginning of COVID, I used food to really get myself in the best shape I've ever been in. And that led into the Ironman experience. And, previously I had dealt with some serious acne issues, which was all dietary related, and got on some serious medication to fix that. But, Brett has an amazing story with his autoimmune condition that he fixed. Probably toss that over to you, Brett, to tell that. But that's really where we got started. I mean, that's how we started to create our voices. And then I think we're both ex-athletes and current athletes. And I think a lot of that team sport background lends us the leadership, just that natural leadership and drive to want to, have a mission and have a focus, and be able to help other people who are going through similar problems. So I think that's really our background, is like we're both team athletes and love the idea of just like bringing people together around positive, winning mentalities. So, and we
Very
do that,
cool.
like doing that through food. So
And so tell us how you ended up with the Meat Mafia names, because those aren't your real names. You're actually Harry and
yeah,
he's Brett. I
Yep.
don't know your last names because I thought it was I thought maybe the reason you named it the Meat Mafia is because you guys were actually Italians, because you have the dark coloring and the so I wasn't sure.
I'm a little bit Italian on my mom's side, but more so German, Irish, and Harry's European too. But the story, it's really slim as part of the reason why we're now pseudo anonymous. We were at first fully anonymous, and we've decided to kind of peel back the curtain more and more because we do think it's important to be able to put your name and your face to the things that you're saying and the things that you believe in. So it's interesting just to even think back to when Harrison started writing for Slim. Slim had a Substack blog where he was really writing about just the current state of our food system, industrial agriculture, and how we're in this like metabolic and moral crisis. Harrison ended up connecting with Slim and writing for him on his blog as a ghostwriter. And then one of the things Slim had mentioned was, hey, why don't you just, pick some anonymous names just in case, you're talking about big food. It might just make sense to be anonymous and then see if you want to come out of the woodwork down the road. So, you know,
Probably wise.
it,
It's dangerous these days, man.
exactly. And we've had a number of amazing conversations with doctors that, came up through the Western medical system and have since kind of broken out of that mold and gone out on their own to start their own telemedicine practices and get out of the grips of just insurance and a few insurance companies and a few of these large companies. And they've just mentioned how tough it's been when you're actually going against the standard narrative. So I think that us not coming from a background of traditional medicine has really been helpful for us, because I think it's helped us say things that a lot of other people might not necessarily be willing to say. So we want to, a lot of what we're doing is we want to tell people the stories and in the history of what's really happened to their food. And it's like, because you look at statistics now, it's 70% of US adults are overweight or obese. It's somewhere like 10 to 25% of kids now have fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is an insane number. 1 in 3 Americans are diabetic or pre-diabetic, and you start to see these insane health statistics. And it's not a coincidence that we've got here, right? It's the way that we've changed our food system and the way that we're currently eating. So we want to help people understand the problem and then really give them like easy solutions, ways to figure out a solution, whether it's just, shopping the outer aisles of your grocery store or building relationships with your local farmers. We want to try not to overcomplicate things. We want to just put out a very simple, positive message to people.
I love it. And I love following you both on Twitter. Now, did both of you just start those accounts? Because you guys blew up if you did.
We started about 3 months ago in the middle of January. We literally both started the accounts at the same time. And I literally remember, I think I had like 20 followers when I wrote my first thread just on my journey to healing my autoimmune issues through a meat-based diet. And yet Harrison and we've just continued to write threads that have blown up. And then every time you write one, you get more momentum. And I think it's a good indication that people want to know the stories behind their food. And, I think it gives us hope that, people really do want to heal themselves and make a change for the better.
Yeah, and it's no offense, Harry, but his story is his arc and his story is so much more powerful.
oh yeah,
But thank God it's not your story.
Exactly.
It's like he gets the benefit of the story, but he also has to deal with the intestinal issues that he had. So, if you don't mind sharing, one of the things that I love about both of you is that you get very vulnerable and very raw and you tell your stories. There's a lot of people who have blood in their stools or throwing up blood, and they would never tell a soul.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is the leadership that I think that Harrison was talking about, that piece of you guys that because you were previously athletes and understand what it gets to get a team going, you're really basically taking that into Twitterverse or whatever. What made you decide to go public with your story? And then if you wouldn't mind sharing some of it, and Harrison, just because you know it so well, if you wouldn't mind interjecting anytime he forgets something or.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was really, Harrison's really the person to thank for it, because he was sometimes, you need the push of your friend to do certain things. And I always, I knew that my story was unique and that there were probably other people that would benefit from it. But he was really the one that convinced me to. I first wrote it into a blog format, and then I ended up publishing it into a thread in January. But it's really Harrison that I have to thank. Otherwise, I definitely would not. I don't think I would have shared it. But for me, I've had, it's close to, it's a 6-year battle with ulcerative colitis. So that's the autoimmune disease that I was diagnosed with in 2016. So I got diagnosed going into my senior year of college. Harrison and I went to school together. As you mentioned, we were teammates on the same baseball team. And I was an athlete growing up. So that's really how I justified a lot of my behavior, because I was burning a lot of calories. I was lifting weights. I was going to practice. I just felt like I could eat whatever I wanted, right? Like, I have amazing parents. I have an amazing family. My mom is an amazing cook. She always made sure to prepare meals for me. But like, prior to me, playing games, I can remember like buying Pop-Tarts and soda and crap. And then you even think about, so many kids drink Gatorades as a way to fuel themselves when they're playing sports. And there's like 20 grams of added sugar in just one bottle of Gatorade. But, most people don't actually know that. So, for me, I think in college, I was definitely like work hard, play hard. So like 40 plus hour baseball schedule, plus a really rigorous course load. And then, you couple that with stress of just probably putting too much pressure on myself, taking the fun out of playing. And then I'm not eating well. I'm eating a ton of fried food, like ordering pizzas late at night, drinking way too much on Fridays and Saturdays, because that's honestly what the culture of college is now, is just binge drinking. And it's pretty sad. And we can unpack that probably later in the episode, but it could have been anywhere from 5 to 10 plus drinks on a Friday, Saturday. And it's like that work hard, play hard mentality starts to catch up to you. So in 2016, I was working an internship in New York City, and I was living at home with my parents in New Jersey. That's where I'm initially from. I'm from the Northeast. And so my commute time was 2 hours one way. So it was about 4 hours of total commute time. And I started noticing that summer, I was like internally bleeding. I started having blood in my stool when I would go to the bathroom. And I think if anyone starts to notice that for an extended period of time, like if you notice it at all, you should immediately go to your doctor. Like, that's the first thing that I would say. And I think, I was 21 at the time, and I was probably just embarrassed, or honestly had that stupid like invincibility complex where I just thought that it would heal itself naturally. And I really didn't treat it. I just continued like the same pattern of behaviors. And it got progressively worse, that by the end of the summer, I was literally going to the bathroom over 20 plus times a day. And then like, couldn't keep anything down. It was like throwing up blood, blood in my stool, because that's what I had, is ulcerative colitis. So basically what happens is your colon gets littered with these ulcers, bloody ulcers, for lack of a better term. And your body can't really process. Your body is basically eating itself. It can't process any of the food that you're ingesting into it. So I think I ended up losing close to 30 pounds in a 3-month span, and ended up getting checked into the hospital. And I got put on a drug called Remicade, which is a biologic drug that they give to people with colitis, Crohn's, severe IBS, some other autoimmune diseases. And I think the drug it was like anywhere from $50,000 to $65,000 per infusion every 8 weeks. So you think about the cost of just me being on that drug.
How long did you do it?
So I was on it for close to 5 years. So I would get an infusion.
So we're talking millions of dollars.
Literally millions of dollars just for me. And then you add that to everyone else with autoimmune diseases that are on the same medication. And with colitis and Crohn's, they're lifelong diseases. What they say is the best that they can do is they can get you into remission, but there's not technically a cure for it. So most people, will be on a biologic drug for 20, 30 plus years, depending on, how long the course of their life is when they get on the drug. So I got on this drug in 2016. And what I say to people is that I'm not anti-biologic, because my stomach at the time was so chronically inflamed that I did need some intensive medical care or something like that biologic to get me out of this chronically inflamed state. But that drug really only took me up to a certain point. It really was until I started controlling the food that I was going into my body. That's really when the next level changes occurred. So I graduated in 2017. Harrison's a year older than me. He graduated in 2016. And so we were close his senior year, but like we just drifted apart because we were living in two different cities. And, we were both signing up for these endurance events, getting into really good shape. And I was eating somewhat cleaner because I was living on my own for the first time, which let me I wanted to save money. So I was cooking more of my meals. And I started noticing that my health started to incrementally improve. And then right around 2019, that's really when the carnivore diet started to get more popularized. And so for those that don't know what the carnivore diet is, it's a diet that consists of all animal products. So it's really meat, fish, and eggs are the core three things, with an emphasis on red meat and beef due to like the amino acid, nutrient, and protein complex there. Like there are a lot of benefits to eating red meat over chicken, which we can talk about. So in 2019, I tried that diet. I thought I was going to do it for a week to 2 weeks. And I ended up doing it strictly for 2 months. And just eating, it was basically like the ultimate form of a removal diet, where I pulled out all the standard American crap that I had been eating my entire life and just centered on real food as God intended. And literally within days, my stomach cleared up, my skin cleared up, my mood cleared up, my energy got better. It almost what people say is like, it almost sounds too good to be true. But if you go on YouTube and type in like colitis carnivore, Crohn's carnivore, autoimmune carnivore, there are so many success stories of people that have had amazing benefits of changing their diet to heal their autoimmune issues. So that for me was the biggest affirmation that, diet really is such a powerful part of the equation. And, now I'm not strict carnivore. Like I've tinkered over time and found the foods that work best for me. So, I do eat a lot of fruit. I found some vegetables like potatoes and onions and things that sit well with my stomach when they're cooked. But I went through a whole process of like journaling out my meals, and I was able to backtrack. Okay, I ate this, that didn't sit well with me. I ate this, I felt good, my mood felt good. So it's really through that experimentation that really got me to the point where I'm at now. And, literally a year ago, so what happens with colitis is you get a colonoscopy every 2 years because you have an increased chance of getting colon cancer. The drugs that they were giving me, the biologic drug that I mentioned, started giving me terrible cystic acne when I've never had skin issues before. So I'm feeling great from this diet, but this drug is causing all these unintended side effects. So I actually proactively spoke to my doctor and said, can we start to talk about a plan of getting me off this drug? Because from my non-medical perspective, my stomach feels fantastic. I feel healthy by all means. I'm in the best shape of my life, but I'm still on this drug that's just has these unintended side effects. So,
my favorite part of your story. I think it's super important because I don't think people advocate for themselves enough when it comes to, working with their doctor. And so I really want people to pay attention during this part because had you not asked for this, you would have probably been on this drug for life, if I understand correctly, because according to them, if they take you off, then they reintroduce it, it's less likely to be effective. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%.
Oh,
Yeah.
love this part of the story.
And I was fortunate too, because I was seeing on the internet examples of people that had gotten off their meds. Like Rob Wolf is a notable example. He's really well known in the paleo community, and he had colitis in the 90s when there weren't even biologics. They would just give you a bunch of prednisone and steroids to basically, mute your stomach. So he had it way worse than I did. But there were a lot of examples of people on the internet that gotten off their drugs. So from my perspective, I'm like, all right, why can't I then try and get off these drugs if my stomach is in really good shape? So luckily I got the colonoscopy. All my inflammation was gone. All my microinflammation was gone. and I was able to get pulled off all the medication. But if I didn't proactively speak up for myself, like you said, Carmen, I would definitely still be on the medication. So and for me, there was like this mental shift. That was the first period of my life where I was thinking to myself, okay, I basically lived like the standard American approach, and got chronically ill. And it's not a coincidence that now 7 out of 10 deaths in the US are caused by chronic diseases. In 1900, it was all infectious diseases. And now it's 7 out of 10 deaths are chronic diseases, largely caused by diet and lifestyle choices. That speaks for itself. So that was the period of my life where I'm thinking to myself, all right, I did what society tells me to do. I'm not blaming anyone, but I was chronically sick in the hospital, for lack of a better term, almost died. And then I started kind of almost running in the opposite direction and eating foods that people were telling me that I shouldn't be eating. And that's really what healed my stomach. So that's really what made me question the paradigm of just nutrition and lifestyle that we're taught. And I think that's a huge reason why we're metabolically and morally failing as a country right now.
Totally agree. That is so beautiful. And I love how you give Harry the credit for inspiring you, because it's so wild how things happen and how they come back around. Because had it not been for Dr. Mary, who saw Adam Curry, she reached out to Texas Slim, and then I invited him onto my podcast because she didn't have one. And now she's looking at starting a podcast, and that connects us to you. And this is the importance of reaching out to people that are like-minded, but also the importance of working together as a group. One of the most wealthy men I know has a partner that they went out on, on their own. They left this business and they went out on their own. And at first they had to kind of go through the things you do in a marriage where you're trying to balance out the positioning, because each person brings different gifts. Mm-hmm. And he has committed to that relationship. And at first it was difficult because they operate different. One is more, social and has to work out and the other one's more analytical and, has to be at the office at a certain time. And what was so cool is when they finally allowed for each other to bring the gifts that they are good at together as a force, they were far more powerful. And I just like to encourage you in your relationship, because it won't always be perfect, but just the fact that you turn that credit over to him. It's like women in relationships a lot of times with really successful men, they don't understand, a lot of people don't understand the force that woman is in that relationship, and how one person is transmitting very powerful and the other one's receiving very powerful and supporting. And so I think it's beautiful, and I hope you guys continue to cherish it, because it's an amazing thing that you have.
Yeah. I think both of us are the belief that nothing will take you further in life than 1 to 2 really strong relationships with people who you can always level with, and people who are going to push you in the right direction. I think Brett and I both were drawn to each other because we wanted the same things out of life, and, viewed the world fairly similarly, and just had the same sort of tenacity and energy towards wanting to do what's best for ourselves and other people. And one of the parts that Brett's story, which I think is left out that connects it to the present, is we were supposed to run a race together in 2019 while he was struggling with all of these issues with colitis. And, from my perspective, I didn't realize what he was going through. I didn't know that he was dealing with all these like very intimate details of this health struggle. And we're training in 2 different cities. So it's a little bit more less of an intimate training experience. And so we get to like a week before race day, and he's in the hospital with these issues with colitis. And he had to not like forego the race, which ultimately ended up in us wanting to sign up for another race later down the road, which I think just goes to show like we had the same ambitions in life. He was dealing with this struggle that I didn't even realize what he was dealing with. And then we get to living together and talking about all the different, things that he was going through. And it was one of those things where I'm like, you just got to tell this story. So many people will benefit from it. And I ultimately believe in like, your support system is, and your close network of people is the most important thing you have in your life. So with that, like Brett and I have just leaned into each other's positive energy, and now we're building something together, which has just been a ton of fun.
It's a great template for others because I just think it's so amazing, and I also think it's very rare for men that are friends to show love to the degree that they probably could or should, just because of different things. And I think it's so awesome to see like a real love story between guys that's not like intimate. It's just appreciation for what that being is bringing to the world. One of my favorite movies is Tombstone, and I love that story between Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday, and how he was with them until the end when they were playing cards together. And so I guess I just love seeing that devotion to another person. I think the world needs more of it.
Hmm.
So going into the animal based stuff, well, actually, let me backtrack just a little bit because I had many years ago, I had issues with my gut. And
Hmm.
it's so interesting to me because nothing is more powerful than taking responsibility for your own health. And
Hmm.
that's the gift that sickness gives you if you're willing to take it and not dump it on a doctor. Dr. Mary will tell people all the time, you have to participate in this process. I can only give you so much information and tell you which way to go. But if you're not doing these things, it doesn't matter. But I wanted to share with people that it's such an amazing gift to have someone's actual story, because that's what saved me is I just went and researched and found, like you did, all of the people, and just little things like blackstrap molasses. You would think, okay, what is that? What does that do? But it is incredible for your gut. Or gelatin. And then the
Hmm.
different ways you can play with gelatin. Like when my daughter's on next time, I'll have her share some of the stuff. But like she's even got me taking like chamomile nighttime tea gelatins before I go to bed. And I just think it's so fun. Trying to remember what else, just a lot of bone broth, stuff like that to start rebuilding that lining. Obviously you did it, right?
Yeah, it was bone broth was definitely a big part of it. A lot of really good sourced animal protein, and then over time, I've just reintroduced foods, and it's really simple, right? It's like what we try and do is we don't try and concern ourselves with like carnivore versus animal based versus vegan versus pescatarian. We're kind of like just eat real foods around the perimeter of a grocery store or something that you could actually buy from a local farmer, and then those ratios, it's really up to you to decide what works best. Because I get a ton of like almost like these fringe questions of, hey, can I incorporate nuts? How do you feel about dairy? Like things like that, where, things like some people thrive off of those things, some people can't tolerate it. So my response
Yeah.
is always like, you have to just try it and see what fits for your stomach. Because we're all so uniquely different. Our gut microbiomes are all uniquely our own, and what works for me might not work for you, and vice versa.
And the
Yeah.
benefit of that carnivore diet too is it eliminates a lot of the processed stuff that will interfere with your intuition on what you should and shouldn't be eating. So the benefit of going on a diet that removes a lot of the additives and flavorings and all those things is that when you do reintroduce nuts and things that you're curious about, you actually get the real feedback. You're not like wondering if it's the bag of chips that you had or whatever. So I think it's an important tool to try to experiment with, which is, reset the baseline and then start reintroducing these foods, which I think is exactly what Brett did. So yeah, I think that's an important message as well.
Absolutely. I have a challenge for you guys. I would love to, because my daughter and I were talking about having you guys on and talking about intuitive eating, but like to actually challenge you guys to read the book and to see what you guys glean from it from your own point of view. I know it's on Audible, so it's not, anything that's undoable, but if you guys are open to it, I would love to do a show with the four of us where we talk about, like we do a little book club.
That'd be
Let's do
amazing.
it.
Okay,
We
sounds
would love to,
good.
because it sounds like that's worked really well for Carly, right? She's had
Oh
great
my
success with
gosh.
that diet.
She has literally stripped herself of unwanted weight. She's gotten rid of like all of her cellulite. Like it's crazy to me because I really didn't think that was possible I just thought some people genetically have that, right? And so now she has me on like, okay, mom, COVID's over. We're getting out. You gotta change everything. You guys have inspired me. Texas Slim has inspired me. And so she's got me doing 10,000 steps or five miles a day. I always have loved walking, but I never walked that much. I was probably closer to like 3 miles. What do you guys have to say about inspiring people who are like haven't worked out in forever? Because I know a lot of times athletes aren't used to people like that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you've worked with all different kinds of people because you guys actually do consults, right?
Mm-hmm. Harry's got a great story about just walking as a form to lose weight coupled with the diet.
Yeah. So when COVID struck, I was trying to simplify everything and focus really on the nutrition aspect of getting healthy. And so what that meant for me was spending more time in the kitchen. Like previously I was cooking a third of my meals. And then when COVID hit, I was working from home, cooking 100% of my meals. And in terms of activity, the gym was closed. So I really was limited to the options that I had with the equipment that I owned, which was, a pair of dumbbells and exercise rings, gymnastics rings, and some resistance bands. And what I found most helpful was going for these long walks. So me and my siblings, we did this walking competition during COVID. And I took it to an extreme. I was walking like 13 miles a day. I think the month of May during COVID, I walked like 13 miles on average. But that's obviously an extreme. You don't need to do that. What I found success with, though, was just the fact that the simplicity of the approach was walk every day, start small. Like you don't need to go into the gym and try to do a bunch of exercises you've never done before. Start with walking, start with getting your baseline activity level up through a very moderate, very easy thing to do. You just have to commit the time to it. And I was walking for hours, but I found that the less stress I was putting on in terms of exercise, it demanded less of me in terms of those like cravings. Like it wasn't draining my well of will, so to speak. So when it came to eating right, I was fully prepared to just put everything that was nutritious and good in my body. And so that's dynamic, I think, is actually really important for people who are just starting off with trying to figure out what's up with their health and how they can improve it. It's focus on the food and do these things that build up your willpower when it comes to exercise and physical activity. So like I started out, because once you start losing weight, you're like, oh, all I want to do is go work out. You lose 10 pounds and you start realizing that you can do more push-ups, you can do more pull-ups, and your physique, if you're focused on physique, like I was focused on feel, like I wanted to just like feel better. I had put on weight through working and working stressful long hours and eating a lot of processed foods during that time period. I was focused on really like improving mental clarity, just having that energy back. And so for me, just the moderate baseline, like walking a bunch, was a great place to start. And then really enjoying the cooking process, like learning one new recipe a week. That was my goal, was walk a certain amount of steps and learn one new recipe a week. And the positive externalities outside of that were all just the actual goals I was going for, but I knew they would just come if I committed to those simple processes.
So great. And so have you become a good chef now?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that I keep it pretty simple still. Like I'm just a creature of habit in a lot of ways. So I cook with like a cast iron pan and a Dutch oven, but I can do a lot of damage with a Dutch oven.
It's a great tool. And it doesn't.
How about you, Brett?
I love to cook as well. And it's just like very simple, basic dishes that everyone should know how to do. Like you should properly know how to, season and sear a steak in a cast iron pan, or bake chicken, or roast a whole chicken, or make some smashed potatoes. Like my girlfriend and I cook together all the time. And I feel like it's actually a really nice connection point in the relationship where you can just be together and making this dish. But so many couples don't take the time to do that. It's a great way to connect with your lady, for sure.
And I think that I've had the chance to live in parts of the world where food is really revered as this cultural connection point for families and friends. Like I lived in an Italian household for a few months, and then lived in Amsterdam for a bit. And everything is really centered around like sitting down, enjoying the meal, like spending more time talking, like spending more time with who you ate than like the fancy restaurant you went to, or the food is just kind of a secondary point, right? Like you actually get to spend time with people and make it more of like a ritual around the community and personal relationships than anything. So that's something that I think that we try to speak to, which is there's a lot of very positive ritualistic elements of just having good food, being able to prepare that food with the people you care about.
So cool. I always think of everything because I'm always scanning, like, it's just a habit I have from working with so many different clients, and I'm putting it all in. Okay, so literally, you guys have so many of these laws of the universe working for you is basically kind of what it is. Because when you're talking about, just start out with walking, that would be absolutely the law of momentum. Once you begin a direction, it begins to build on its own. And I think sometimes people forget that, it's really amazing. Somebody here asked about should people be taking multivitamins? I have one comment on that before you guys answer it, and that is that when my former husband and I had an environmental company, and we would go clean up hazardous waste sites all over, and we would have all these trailers and these different things. I was talking to this man that was cleaning out the toilets just because I'm a friendly person, and he was sharing with me that he cannot believe how many vitamins he sees, whole vitamins, like Centrum vitamins, in the toilets when he's like flushing them out, or the porta potties. And I think that a lot of times people don't realize that a quality of a vitamin actually matters. Like obviously, if it comes out whole, it's not methylating at all in your body, and it's probably not a good vitamin. But what do you guys have to share about the vitamin end of the world?
Do you want to take that one? Maybe I'll give my thoughts first.
Yeah.
There's really an interesting paradigm here, because I think both or all of us would agree that if you're eating a balanced and nutritious diet, you would be able to get all of the nutrients that you need from your food. And that's ultimately what I think we should all be striving for. But the nature of today's world is a lot of the foods that our grandparents were eating were actually just different qualities of food. So like the same chicken that we're eating today just doesn't have the same nutrient value. It doesn't have the same level of mineral quality. Like we were out at a ranch that this past weekend, and they were speaking to the soil quality when they bought the ranch, and the fact that the soil was depleted in magnesium and iron. And then they go and test the flesh of the animals that they're raising on that soil, and the animals, the bison that they have on the soil, was deficient in magnesium and iron. And so that's just the nature of the world we're living in. A lot of the issues that we're seeing is the soil is so depleted in these minerals that we need to supplement. So I think I'm of the thinking that if you are intentional about the way you're buying your food, so if you're going to the sources that are people who are really caring for the soil and caring for the animal, you're going to be getting all of your nutrition from food. But if you don't have that luxury or knowledge base yet of like knowing exactly where to go for your food, I think a multivitamin is probably important. And as you said, I think the quality of it is really important as well, because I think one of the things a lot of people don't realize is, and this goes to your point, Carmen, when you ingest a multivitamin, your body is not used to like breaking that multivitamin down. It's used to having other like flesh of an animal, or like the flesh of a fruit, or fruit or vegetables alongside of it. So those vitamins can just flow right through you. And so I think there's a lot of important points in that where you should be taking your vitamin with food, but also if you can just be trying to get your nutrients from all the food that you eat.
Absolutely agree.
I don't, to Harry's point, Carmen, I don't supplement with any vitamins. I think we both have the same, it's like that intuitive style of eating where you should be able to get enough vitamins and nutrients from the actual food that you're ingesting. that's part of the issue that we do have with like some of these plant-based and vegetarian diets is like, you do have to supplement artificially. So that probably speaks to the nutrient deficiency of what they're eating. I think that I have heard that there are people that are big in the nutrition space that talk a lot about magnesium supplementation for stress and a few other things. But I think that if you are going to use a supplement, it's just important to make sure that it's like third-party tested, made in the United
That's what my
States,
daughter does.
right? There's a great website, Carmen, called Labdoor, LABDOOR.com. And it gives you reviews and ratings of all the top supplements and just make sure that they're verified the right way. So if you are going to do it, I would just make sure you're getting it from a good source. And then I've heard a lot of good things about the company called Thorne, THORNE. They're supposed to have a really good domestic product as well.
Awesome. Soon enough, you guys will be sponsored by somebody.
Yeah, right.
It'll be great. I mean, it's amazing how fast you've grown. I'm really impressed. So tell me something, because you've talked to so many people, which reminds me, I think one of my favorite interviews that I watched on the Meat Mafia, just YouTube. I know that you have a lot more of them elsewhere. Was the gourmet caveman. He gave some great tips, and he had such a good point about the filet versus the harder meat. He was very good at sharing all of the different benefits, because I hadn't even thought of it until I was listening to him. One of the ways that we process and electrify, keep, like, our teeth are actually like the fuse box of our electromagnetic being. And so if we're not chewing things, we're not activating that electromagnetic process. And everyone loves the filet, or at least I thought so. And it was so cool to hear his opinion on that. So what's like the most unusual thing that you've heard about steaks, preparing steaks, that kind of surprised you, or was something like you went, oh wow, I hadn't thought of that?
I think one of the things that I learned from the community of people that we've talked to is that the different cuts of meat, like this might not answer your question directly, but there's, everyone wants to go for the ribeye because it's the tender part of the cow, but there's other parts like the chuck eye that is cheaper. And most people who start cooking the chuck eye in place of the ribeye end up never going back because it's cheaper and it's just as good. That's one thing I've learned. The other thing, I think just in terms of like preparation style, Gourmet Caveman in that episode goes through the reverse sear method. That's something that I've picked up.
Yeah, that's what my daughter does.
It's just, it's like a slower way to cook it, but it's always on point. Like if you're trying to have a really good meal, I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, so we won't tell the secrets here. You have to go to their channel and learn. But it is good. And he does talk about the aromatics, which I think is, what I love the most about what my daughter does, especially because she'll go and she'll pull the herbs from our, pots outside. And so it's just so truly aromatic. It's like somebody just like, oh, it's just awesome. I just love it. And so, one of the things that I thought was really interesting that I learned early on when I started getting into raw food cooking many, many years ago was that the meat actually has the enzymes necessary in it to break down the meat. So really, when you cook something well done rather than medium rare, you're making it more difficult for your stomach to process it. And I thought that was really, really important information for people to know, because maybe they like it better, but they're open to making it easier on their stomach. Any other kind of unusual things like that?
Yeah, I think most people aren't aware of how much we've denatured our food because of these common taste practices, right? Like most people are very afraid of meat that's overly rare, for example, because we've been told about the bacteria content, food poisoning, et cetera. When it's like we drink things like kombucha or these different probiotics to get all this good bacteria into our stomach. So, that doesn't necessarily make sense. So I can tell you firsthand, I have been incorporating more raw foods into my diet recently, and I've definitely seen a noticeable benefit and my overall energy, the quality of my skin. And there are a lot of other people that have reported the same thing. So for example, like liver's got a very pungent taste when you cook it, right? So what I do is if I'm going to eat some liver, I will marinate it in some olive oil, balsamic vinegar, and sea salt. And then I'll chop it into little pieces, and then I'll basically like pop it like a capsule and then just swallow it with water. So that way I'm getting the benefits of like the raw liver. And I know that's extreme.
That's what my sister or my daughter does too. She feels like my
Yeah,
sister.
she's
But
based. Yeah. Yeah,
I actually like liver. I think it's incredible. I love liver pate. I like liver and onions. I think it's so good, but I think I'm weird. And what I do is I make a whole bunch and then I chop it into little sections and put them in the freezer, in little glass jars. And so I can just get my organ meat when I want to. And that was another thing. The Gourmet Caveman had some really good advice on ground beef and liver. And I won't say that either. I'm really trying to send people to you.
Definitely. Yeah. And no, and I appreciate that. And then we can even give it away. He talks about how he blends some of the liver, the heart, the organs into the ground beef. If you're a little bit squeamish about that, the ground beef basically masks the taste of it. And then also if you're buying from a good local farm, or there's certain companies where they'll make an ancestral blend where they'll pre-sell the ground beef with the organs like the liver and the heart. And it's amazing. Like the local farm that I buy from in San Diego, they sell it, and, Cali's more expensive. So it's like $12 a pound, but it's some of the best nutrient dense stuff. But a lot of the raw foods has to come with the stigma that we've given to raw foods, right? It's like we love these things, these delicacies like sushi, sashimi. We eat carpaccio out at restaurants. We eat tartare out at restaurants. We like raw oysters,
yeah.
Right? But then
oysters,
we get squeamish. But that's a great point. Is if you do want to start incorporating more raw foods, like sashimi and oysters is an amazing place to start.
Oh, that's a good point. And so there was somebody in the chat that said that in Korea we eat liver raw with salt, pepper, sesame oil condiment.
Wow.
Pretty wild. It was interesting because I was thinking about just my own journey because I've been alive longer than y'all, so I've seen all the different trends, and really people there's this big push like, oh, we're going to scare people on these. Not only are we going to sell oysters, but we're going to put a paragraph on there about how dangerous they could be, and you could die from this, and I mean the chances of dying are so slim, but they don't put that all over Lucky Charms,
Yeah.
and it's kind of crazy when you think about it, because the kind of sickness you had, that's like lifelong. Whereas, getting food poisoning for a night, yeah, it sucks, but it's over,
Exactly. I think a great example to your point is the stigma against raw dairy, in particular, raw milk.
Yes.
So like, we're used to drinking pasteurized milk, and pasteurization was really a practice that was created in the early 1900s during the Industrial Revolution, when you had these massive dairy and meat processing plants that were disgusting. And so because you had such large quantities of dairy, you had to heat up the milk and pasteurize it to make it safe for human consumption. But what they've been finding is that when you heat up the milk, it actually denatures the overall milk. It destroys some of the really good bacteria in it, some of the really good digestive enzymes, and denatures a bunch of the proteins. So if you've seen a resurgence of raw milk because you can source it directly from a local dairy farmer, and there are a lot of people that have thought that they were lactose intolerant that are able to handle raw milk.
Good information.
And then to your point, I even said that is I just looked up a statistic that from 1993 to 2006, there were only 3 deaths that were linked to the consumption of raw dairy. So, yeah. Right. It's like our risk association where it's like, we won't drink raw milk. You can't get it in a supermarket, but then you can buy this cereal that's got, 40 grams of added sugar that we feed to our kids as breakfast. Yeah. So it's just what we've come to accept.
It's that constant mind control. Like people don't realize that the mind is a place of warfare, and placing things on restaurants across the board scares people. Mm-hmm. And we have a survival instinct, and of course we're going to subconsciously use it unless we can override it. And if you're just like you said, looking at that risk assessment and going, okay, wait a minute, long-term, autoimmune disease or one night of throwing up from food poisoning, I don't know. It seems worth the risk to me.
I think Oh, I was going to say another thing to introduce into the conversation, just to emphasize, is I think the sourcing part of all of this, when you're considering, trying raw milk, is really important, or trying, to eat a more denatured, like as Brett was saying, some of these like meats that are, or liver that's raw. You really want to make sure that you're getting it from a source that's not going to be having a lot of chemical fertilizers on their property, that they're not loading up their animals with antibiotics, because when you do eat and consume it raw, those things flow right through to you. So I think that really knowing who is raising the animals that you're consuming is an important part of this whole conversation.
Yes. Yes. I got distracted because there was somebody had written down mental note, Chuck I. Really and truly go and watch the Gourmet Caveman, because he breaks it down really well, gives you how to do it, how much it costs, and really sells you on, like, why am I spending all this money on ribeyes when I could be getting, basically the same thing. He did a really great job. You guys, I don't know where you guys found him, but he's amazing.
Twitter. He'd probably love to come on your podcast too, honestly. He's a very underrated follow. We think that he's going to get a lot bigger, but that's like the perfect example, right? He has a formal culinary background. He's a chef by trade, and he had his own incredible weight loss transformation with a lower carb diet, and now a switch to an animal-based diet. So he gives all these amazing tips on different cuts of meats and the preparation methods. So you're not spending $25 for a pound of meat. You can make something like a chuck roast, which is $10 a pound. Like Harry mentioned, you can cook it in a certain way where it really does taste like a ribeye. If you like dry brine it, so you basically like pre-salt it and then reverse sear it and then finish it in the cast iron. It's amazing.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was, a lot of people don't know, like the perfect medium rare, like if you want to know what it feels like, it's your pulse, like what it feels like right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that. And then the other thing that I learned that I thought was really interesting is there's this thing that rhymes with clemente, this pimente. It's a pepper, and it's supposed to be a really good tenderizer. I just ordered it. It apparently comes from France or something, and I'll keep you all posted on what I think of that.
Keep us posted. Yeah, I'm curious.
Anything else? Has there been anything else that's just wowed you and you went, oh my gosh, like this is a problem, or this is the answer? Anything else to share on that?
I think one of the things I think about, which is echoing some of the things we've already said, is just eating nose to tail, which includes some of the less sought after but very nutritious aspects of the animal, like bone marrow. As we already talked about, the liver. I just think those are, if you're looking to reach for the multivitamin, I would try to go for the bone marrow or the liver before you do that, because those are two incredible sources of nutrients that range the spectrum. Like if you're eating bone marrow, you're going to be getting collagen, which is good for your skin, your hair, your nails. And then if you're eating liver, you're getting a lot of the really nutrient dense aspects of the animal that accumulate in the liver, which I think is probably better than going for the multivitamin.
Totally agree with you. Absolutely. Well, I thank you guys so much for coming. I definitely want to have you back. Carly wants to join us. Before you go, you're probably inspiring all of us older ladies to get out there and walk a little more, be a little smarter about how we eat. What snack could we eat? What snacks do you guys go to when you just have to have something crunchy, or you know what I mean? Like, do you just not do that?
No, we definitely do. And that's the thing, right? Is like, I wouldn't say that our willpower is any better than anyone else's. And we're just surrounded by this plethora of just processed food at all times. So it's very tempting. We've actually found pork rinds to be a great snack, just to try and get that crunch. And you can even dip them in like guacamole or like a good type of queso or something like that. And it's so delicious. And then there's also like brands like Parm Crisps, where it's really good quality cheese that basically is, they have it like a cracker or chip type consistency. So I'll even dip those in guacamole, or even just crack some on top of my salad. But then we try, it's also like, sometimes you're jonesing for like a potato chip or something like that. And there are some great brands that make chips and tortilla chips that are sourced. They're not cooked in seed oils or cooked in avocado oil or tallow. Harry got me into the brand Siete. They make great chips, right? So something like Siete. So it's like, for events or things like the Super Bowl, it's like there are healthier alternatives of the stuff that tastes great. That, is it as good as eating steak? No, but it's not going to set you back in a way that like eating a bag of conventional chips would.
Yeah. How about you, Harry? Any snacks that you?
There's one more that I would add to Brett's list there. So there's a brand called HU that has these crackers that I think are great. So if you're gonna put together a cheese board or a meat board, they've got really good crackers that don't have any of the seed oils that Brett mentioned, any of the added flavors. It's just a very wholesome cracker that if you want that crunch or salty flavor, which we all eventually come back around to, it's a good alternative. I think that's the one that I thought Brett was going to get there, but thanks for leaving me one, Brett.
Exactly.
Hey, we gotta have more to talk about next time.
Yeah, exactly.
And then one other thing I would like to share with people, because sometimes like my daughter had to go pretty far to get like a really well-sourced goat milk and raw milk, both. You can bring them home and freeze them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't really think in that term when it comes to milk, and so I just wanted to share that last little tidbit.
Yeah, we've even been people will say, oh, well, how can I connect with my local farm? Most towns or counties will have some type of a farmer's market, which is at least like a great starting point. So when I'm in Austin, I know Harry has a good relationship with Richardson's Farms that shows up there, and they sell raw milk. And then they also sell colostrum, which is like the first milk from the mother cow. That's like, I think with like digestive enzymes that could be over 100 times more powerful than raw milk. So sometimes we'll buy some colostrum. Like there's so many different ways that you can go about it.
Yeah. And I'm sure some people are like, ew.
I know it actually,
some of this takes some getting used to,
I know.
But once you're used to it, it's you adjust and all is well. And then you're healthier.
Exactly. Well, that's why Dr. Mary is fantastic too, because she's got that, thank you so much for introducing us to her, by the way, but
yes, my pleasure.
Amazing. And she always preaches on that 48-hour bone broth fast, which is an amazing way to like clear the brain fog and almost like reset your palate that's been manipulated by wet processed foods. And then as you start to reintroduce these animal products back in, it's like you crave the salt and the saturated fat and the fruit and the honey. It's like rewired to all these natural foods that you no longer want the Coke or the Cheetos or any of this other crap that's out there.
Yeah, I love her because she really specialized in pain initially. And what was so fun is she would have somebody come in and they would have issues, and she's like, I refuse to prescribe anything till you try these healthy things. And if you've tried them, then we can go from there. I'm sure if it's horribly painful, but I just like that concept. It's just let's look at this holistically, because we've lost that. And to go back to the true doctor for each person, just like the true dietitian for anyone is themselves. And that's one of the things I like about you guys. Not, even though you're called the Meat Mafia, you're not like mafia about it.
Yeah,
you guys are the worst mafia ever.
We're the nicest mafia of all time. We're both just people that have like really just gone down the rabbit hole of experimentation and have found a solution that works really well for us. And, we're obviously not doctors or medical experts, but there are some amazing doctors that are out there that are now setting up telemedicine practices just to advise people on proper nutrition and weight loss. So Dr. Mary Care, like you just mentioned, she's great. Then also Dr. Phil Avadia, he has a telemedicine practice. We had Dr. Tro on, he also has a telemedicine practice. And then Dr. Brian Lenskis, who's an endocrinologist out of San Diego. He also has a metabolic health practice, just advising on nutrition and dietary changes. So there are some amazing people out there that people can connect with if they want to actually have that doctor to give them that real medical advice on diet and nutrition.
Absolutely. And so tell everyone how they can find you, where they can find you, how your consults work, whatever it is that you're doing. Just go ahead and give people the rundown.
Yeah, so I think the easiest place to find us is on Twitter. So we have two separate accounts. So mine is CarniClemenza and Brett's is MrSollozzo. But we're really focused on building out the podcast, which is the Meat Mafia podcast, which you can find on Spotify. And then we're also building out a newsletter, which we've gone over the past month, have been delivering on Fridays, but we're also going to be putting out a more premium version of that, which will be released on Sundays, which dives into a bit more of the research that we're doing on food history, nutrition, and how all of these aspects of the food and healthcare system tie together. And so, those are really the best places to find us. If you go to our Twitter profiles, you'll be able to find the link for the newsletter, but I think maybe I can share it with you afterwards, the actual link, just so.
Yeah, if you guys can just send me whatever you want in the description box, I will put it there, and I'll also pin it as the top comment.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then I'll get with you guys soon, and we'll schedule our book club.
That sounds great. Yeah, tell Carly we're looking forward to meeting her.
Yeah.
Okay, I will. All right. Well, thanks everybody for being here, and thanks guys for coming, and we'll see you guys soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Carmen.
Thanks, Carmen.